Good evening, everyone. I am London Breed, the 45th mayor of the city and county of San Francisco, and I'm so excited to be here with you at the Commonwealth Club tonight to talk about an important subject matter. So thank you all so much for being here. I want to begin with a story about a ship. We're next to the bay, we're right on Embarcadero, so why not? Built in 1935 in Connecticut, it was a commercial vessel. But in 1849, when word of gold spread across the world, its captain learned that hundreds of migrants were stranded in Panama, desperate to reach San Francisco. So the ship was rebuilt into a passenger vessel. It carried pioneers to the city during the gold rush, and when it arrived, most of the crew abandoned the ship themselves, looking for gold. Instead of sailing away, the captain ran the Niantic aground in what is now located at Clay and Montgomery, where the Transamerica Pyramid Building is. And there, it became something new. It became a store ship and warehouse holding cargo goods and supplies. It later became an office, and then the Niantic Hotel. The hotel burned, it was built, it was burned again, it was rebuilt. The earthquake of 1906 damaged it, and yet the hull of the ship still rests beneath our financial district today. From trade vessel to passenger ship to warehouse to hotel, through fires and earthquake, the Niantic persevered. And so did San Francisco. The story reminds us of something very fundamental. Reinvention is not new here. It's our foundation. In 1849, it was gold. In 1927, it was the television, invented right here in San Francisco. In the 1960s, it was culture and consciousness during the summer of love. In the 1990s, it was the .com, then mobile, then social, then the cloud, then this, then that. And now, artificial intelligence. During my time as mayor, I officially declared San Francisco the AI capital of the world, not just as a slogan, but because the facts supported it. We are home to companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Scale AI, and we have one of the highest concentrations of AI engineering talent anywhere in the world. Billions in venture capital flowing into startups, redefining industries. But what is here matters, but here's what matters most. AI for the sake of AI is not enough. The real opportunity is AI applied to humanity's greatest challenges. And that brings us to tech and biopharma. San Francisco sits at a rare intersection. Technology, life sciences, venture capital, and policy, all within a few square miles. Institutions like UCSF anchors one of the most dynamic biotech ecosystems in the world. And what makes this moment even more significant is who is in the room right now. For a long time, industries like technology and biopharma didn't always reflect the diversity of the communities that they served. Today, that is changing. Leaders from different backgrounds, different lived experiences, different communities, and not just participating in innovation, but helping to shape it. And that matters, because when the people building the future reflect the people living in it, the solutions are stronger, more thoughtful, and more inclusive. That density accelerates innovation. And the next frontier isn't just smarter software, it's accelerating drug discoveries, it's transforming diagnostics, it's shortening clinical timelines, it's helping people live longer and live better. During the pandemic, many questioned San Francisco's future, but innovation never left here. What I learned during that time is simple. San Francisco doesn't panic during a transition. It incubates. Moments of disruption are moments of redesign. The same ecosystem that once built social platforms can now build longevity platforms. The same engineers who optimize data systems can now optimize clinical trials. This is evolution. Gold built this city once. Innovation has rebuilt it again and again and again. Now science and artificial intelligence together can redefine how long we live and how well we live. However, innovation alone is not enough. We will need to build responsibly, we will need to expand access, and we will need to innovate to improve the quality of life for everyone and not just a few. Because extending life expectancy without extending equality is just not enough. And this is where all of you come in. You are not just building companies, you are shaping the future of human longevity. You are determining how quickly cures move from discovery to patent. You are deciding whether breakthrough scales or stalls. Like the Niantic, this city and this industry will not be defined by one chapter. It will be defined by what we build next. And history tells us something important. When innovation reflects diversity of the people building it, the outcomes are stronger and more lasting. So let's make sure that the next chapter extends life, expands access, and improve the conditions for generations to come. And would you please now help me welcome the two co-hosts that are bringing us here tonight for this incredible discussion, Karina Kaufman, the founder of We Are, and Dr. Carmen Banks, the founder of Melanin Science. Let's give them a round of applause.
Hi, everybody. I'm Karina Kaufman. I'm the founder of We Are.
And hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Carmen Banks, and I'm the founder and CEO of Melanin Science.
Yeah, so I want to give everybody, thank you for that, but I would like everyone, I'm just so appreciative that you're here. Carmen and I both are. We have multiple communities coming together to celebrate these Black executives on stage. So if we could please give yourselves a round of applause just for showing up. Thank you for that. Go ahead.
Okay. I'd first like to thank our program sponsor, Gilead Sciences, because without their support, this would not be possible, and to have all of you here today. But I just wanted to say a few words. In the era where our world has become increasingly divided, creating spaces that are intentional to celebrate and uplift Black voices that are not only in the life sciences, but pioneering the innovation that's driving the economy is increasingly important. And had it not been for community organizations like Melanin Science and We Are, platforms and allies like the Commonwealth Club and Michelle Meow, and industry supporters backing our vision, I likely would not be standing here today as a scientist working in one of the world's biggest biotech hubs. But our work is far from over and does not end at Black History Month. Less than 10% of the STEM workforce is comprised of Black and brown workers, and less than 2% is comprised of Black women. So it is my honor and absolute privilege to celebrate this brilliant panel of Black excellence at the intersection of tech and biopharma here today, and introduce Dr. Tashika Amir-Golizadeh, Senior Associate General Counsel, IP at Gilead Sciences. Farron Rucker, CTO and co-founder of Syntex Data. Dr. Sana Gaspard, CEO and founder of Rubitection. And Dr. Garen Wilson, lifecycle leader of Roche in the respiratory and allergy department. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce our incredible moderator and ally, Michelle Meow, producer of the Michelle Meow Show at the Commonwealth Club.
Well, we should, let's see here. Okay, let's do it. Let's do this. Okay, big round of applause for Carmen and Karina, please. Oh, it's our walk-on music. Well, welcome everyone to the Commonwealth Club World Affairs of California. Before we get started, I think that as I was told in the green room, it's added value if we can just share a little bit of intro and a fun fact about ourselves. So I think we'll start with that. I'll go first. I'm Michelle Miao, and I am a member of the Board of Governors for the Commonwealth Club World Affairs. And a fun fact about myself is that I can wiggle my ears. So hopefully you'll ask me to show you during the reception.
All right, Michelle, you got me interested now. I'm like watching that ear movement. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you. I want to thank We Are and Melanin in Science for convening this space, and such a cool place to be. And it's a pleasure to be a part of this panel. So I'm Garen Wilson. I am a lifecycle leader within Genentech and Roche. And basically what I do is I help kind of steer science towards becoming a medicine. And then once it becomes a medicine, I kind of think about all the ways that patients can benefit from treatments across various disease areas. It's kind of the day-to-day. And then I help try to figure out where we should be exploring more science, where should we be investing more across respiratory and allergy. Fun fact, let's see. So this was like a surprise question we got backstage. All right, here's a fun fact. I won a chili cook-off 3 years in a row with my signature chili recipe, Garen's sweet meat with a little bit of heat. And I'll just leave it at that. Just to be provocative.
Yeah.
Okay, I will go. Lovely to meet everybody. Excited to be here. So my name is Dr. Santa Gaspard. I have my doctorate in biomedical engineering from Carnegie Mellon. I translated my PhD research out of the university into Rubitection, which I'm the CEO of right now. And we're developing an AI-enabled device and care management platform for chronic dermatology, chronic wound care, so like diabetic foot ulcers, bed sores, as well as cardiac health monitoring. A fun fact about me, 2 fun facts. I love anything on the water, and I can play the French horn.
Okay. First off, happy Black History Month. Just super honored to be here. Let's see. Yeah, so CTO of Syntax Data. So 50% of organizations aren't ready to adopt AI. And so our primary goal is to help those teams and organizations. So we set up the data infrastructure, your business intelligence, we even do training. So the objective is to help organizations move faster with technology and AI, primarily in biotech, medtech, and life sciences. And then I have over a decade of experience in software engineering and data engineering. So I love technology and its ability to change and evolve each year. Fun fact, I recently won the Datathon MVP with the Gates Foundation. A team full of just sharks, and it was phenomenal to be able to compete. And so, yeah, that's everything.
I love it. I don't know if I'm on. Am I on? Okay. My name is Dr. Tashika Mirgolizade. I'm Senior Associate General Counsel at in IP at Gilead Sciences, where I did patent litigation for Gilead in a variety of therapeutic areas, and now I counsel the business concerning IP issues about business transactions and what have you. I got my PhD in chemistry before I decided to go into law. My parents are listening right now. I'm so glad that I finished school, and I'm so glad that they're glad that I finished school. So I did eventually end it. But a fun fact about myself is I'm obsessed with musicals. Second fun fact is I used to play the baritone.
Band nerds.
Awful lot of talent up here on the stage. All right, let's get started. So let's go with, the title of the program and get to the heart of our conversation tonight. What does tech and biopharma convergence look like in today's biopharma ecosystem? And we'll share our point of views and, of course, your respective roles in the industries. So that means across business, commercialization, clinical studies, IP, and tech. we'll go the other way around this time. So Dr. Tashika, you'll be our honor, the first one to kick off.
No problem at all. I know a big one for us in IP is, of course, who's the inventor? It's great that we're going to have this technology that's going to help us expedite early drug discovery and whatnot. But at some point, and this is what the United States Patent Office told us, there has to be a human involved. So there has to be a human to contribute to that concept. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the case law develops over the years in terms of at what point on the spectrum is the contribution significant enough.
I wasn't going to mention it, but I mean, there is conversation right now where a certain specific person of power doesn't want a human involved. So let's come back to this point, because I would like to hear from the rest of the panel, their thoughts on this if they want to offer it. But we'll keep going down on the question of what does tech and biopharma convergence look like for you, Dr. Farron?
Let's see. I'd say the biggest thing is the amount of data that we collect. And so there's a lot of still human data handling and things of that nature. So the amount of errors is reducing the quality of different models. So I think having like a strong data ecosystem that's able to process the data at whatever rate that organization needs is pretty critical. Some organizations are processing millions and billions of records, and so you can't do that in Excel and just kind of like some of the standard processes that are generally used. So I'd say, data collection, data handling, setting up an efficient ecosystem is extremely critical, especially now with all the AI and things of that nature.
Dr. Sana?
I would say I think that convergence looks like, from a healthcare perspective, medical tech coming into the home and it being easier to use. So think about edge devices where you can now use AI to do doctor level assessment and get remote care, which is hard right now because the infrastructure is not set up. AI is not quite there. The FDA is not quite there. And patients are not quite there, ready to do their own at home. But that's where everyone's headed. And then I think the advancement of AI, edge devices, and future quantum computing will enable not just episodic evaluation of patients, so you come in only when you have an event, but you'll be able to monitor yourself more regularly, whether that's through your toilet. That's already a thing. Whether that is through your toilet that's monitoring you regularly, like the license plate cameras, or you have actual medical devices that you purchase for specific things, along with companion diagnostics for biopharma. So instead of waiting for you to develop the condition, they can monitor and give you preventative tech. So I think it's going to shift a lot of healthcare into prevention, into kind of self-empowerment, and then also bring it into the home so we can have better healthcare, earlier interventions, a lower cost, ultimately.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so maybe I'll build on what my panelists are saying. I think this is a fascinating discussion to be a part of, and I think it's exciting that we're doing this in California, which is fundamentally the birthplace of biotechnology. The company that I work with started this 50 years ago, but you also are at the epicenter of AI and just kind of digital advancement. And I think fundamentally, like, the future of human health really is going to be born out of rooms like this and conversations like this, where we bring all these these areas together. I would say in convergence in maybe biotechnology probably is maybe in two domains. I would say it's disruptive. There's the barrier to become a biotech company is probably lowered. You can build an AI platform that can, discover new targets that can be used to develop therapeutics that can address disease. But I would say at scale in larger organizations is really integration. It's putting these new tools and systems in place that can accelerate the ecosystem of drug development, from target discovery to drug development to getting our medicines to patients faster. We are using AI across that entire ecosystem to identify, what type of areas we should be investing in, how we can speed up drug discovery. I think all of us know that we have family members and loved ones who have all kinds of serious diseases, and we want to see new treatments develop for those people faster. And so I think what we're seeing now with the ability for data to be, kind of more interpretable and more well-managed, more structured, the ability for us to look at that data and understand what is true disease versus what is noise. And that allows us to then develop the types of medicines that can address those areas, and we can deliver those those type of therapeutics faster. So I think the integration of technology and biopharma is incredibly exciting, and I think it's rooms like this that allow us to catalyze increased benefit.
We're going to dig a little bit deeper in all of the points that you made. By the way, for the audience here, we do have question cards for you, so you probably noticed them, and you can engage in the conversation too. So if you have questions for our speakers, you can write them down, and we'll call for them a little later. If you need pens or pencils, we'll also pass that out. So let's dig deeper. From where you sit, where is the convergence of biopharma and tech already working? And then the second half of that question is, where is it still aspirational? We'll go back down this way.
Yeah.
Dr. Guerin.
Yeah, so where I would say it's working in like drug development is in target discovery. So one of the kind of the earliest stages of drug development is just understanding why a disease is a disease. What is the kind of underlying biology that is going wrong, and what, drives that pathobiology, and then how do you better understand that and then better find ways to disrupt that bad disease process. And that is an area where, AI and technology is incredibly sophisticated in the areas of drug discovery. We can use simulations, AI labs in a loop. This is technology that we're doing, at Genentech, where we can simulate, different types of targets and then run that through machines that allow us to then match a target to a potential protein that could change the course of a disease. And so that acceleration allows us to then select the targets that have the best possibility of becoming medicines. Now, that is a long process, like target selection is at the beginning of that, but it's exciting to see AI accelerating our ability to just narrow the field in a more focused way, so our resources are deployed where we think they will have the best yield over the long course of drug development. Where it's challenging, I would say, is probably regulatory grade reproducibility. So data that, a health authority can look at and say, this type of device or technology can reproduce a finding of a patient the same way over and over and over again, so that we can understand if you were to intervene with a medicine and you, as a part of your clinical study or clinical trial, you were using some sort of cough monitor or respiratory monitor, my space is respiratory disease, it's kind of the health authorities catching up to the innovation that's in that space and them feeling comfortable, because they are fundamentally doing a very important service, which is monitoring and managing the safety of the use of medicines in people. So they have a very important role, and oftentimes that innovation is out in front of the regulatory environment. And so I would say the challenge is making sure that the data and these new tools that we're integrating into studies that can accelerate innovation meet global health authority standards and can be considered when we are filing, our medicines for approval.
Yeah. To build on that, I would say where I think it's working on the device AI side is on things that like radiology. So AI for imaging, like brain scans, heart scans, lung scans, cancer scans. It's usually a little bit more accurate than your physician, takes less time, and is already being used right now in hospitals to the point that people are asking, well, what's the purpose of the radiologist, right? Like, we're questioning his job. He went to school. We're like, do we still need you? Because AI is working so well. So that's the kind of place right now where AI is working around image processing in healthcare. I also think another place that's working is on the data analytics coming out of devices to give more accurate either diagnosis or progression of disease, but that's usually by disease state. Some areas where I believe we could go, or I would love if we went, which we are not there yet, but if we used AI and CRISPR, which I know is controversial, to do precision medicine. It's not.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah. I think that would be super cool. Like, then we could move towards eradicating diseases than just treating them, right? I think that would be interesting. Obviously, we're not there yet. Another place where I feel like we could do better, and this is kind of a two-part, is more equitable care, like using technology to actually focus on making things more accessible, cheaper, and not just for people in the US, but global, thinking like at a global health level. A lot of developing countries, for example, can't afford an expensive MRI, but they could run an AI algorithm on their phone, right, to look at a radiology screen, right, or to look at a heart image, right? I think we, as innovators in the US, I think we're not there yet, but what we should be doing is thinking how this increases global access to care. Because most people, even in developing countries, have a computer in their hand called a smartphone, right? And they don't have access to specialists. They don't have access to, a neurosurgeon, a heart surgeon, but they could run a code on their phone, right? They could go to a doctor and pay to get an imaging. Maybe they may not be able to pay for the whole process, but they could then run it on their phone and be like, now how do I get to the third step of treatment, right? And that would also help here in terms of like rural health. So I think we're not doing that well either, but there's a huge opportunity there, in my opinion.
Dr. Farron.
Oh, yeah, this is a big one. Okay. So we're actually working on a platform, a health intelligence platform, with one of my partners, Neil Solomon, who's, I believe, in the crowd somewhere today. It's a really cool because we're exploring personalized medicine. So we're looking at diagnostic, prognostics, and therapeutic models. The tool or the platform is going to be designed to work with doctors. And I won't go into the weeds of everything we're working on, but it's not only physiological but genomic data. And I think it's huge. It's definitely going to be like next generation. Going back to what they were saying as far as like certain practices that have limited resources, they can use tools such as this, right, or similar tools, right, as far as from the technology standpoint. But I couldn't have imagined 5 years ago that you'd be able to run such complex models from your phone or within a browser that you can do today with a high level of accuracy. I think what's important, I'm not necessarily pro AI. I'm more process improvement and just data infrastructure. I think people, when they hear AI, they think like job replacements, but instead it's more of it should be used as an amplifier to someone with the domain expertise. So it doesn't take out the human, it just allows them to move faster. If a doctor is working with 1,000 patients a day, right, you give them a superpower. AI could then become a cape, not a replacement. So that's kind of how I've seen AI and its convergence the past year or so.
Oh, I so love that point in terms of like not removing the person, not removing the human from the equation. Lawyers, as many know, we're notoriously risk adverse. And so AI has, hit and crashed into our ship with a huge force. But some places that I can see that convergence is when you have something that's like time and labor intensive, like document discovery, where you have like copious amounts of materials. So it's helpful there, or case law research if you're looking for something specific, getting the first drafts of contracts and what have you. But what's important to all of that is that there has to be a human involved, because as lawyers, we have ethical responsibilities and professional responsibilities as well. So we are responsible for that end work product. So we have to look over whatever the AI outputs are. In terms of something aspirational, I remember someone saying something like lawyers can be totally removed from the equation and patent lawyers can be totally removed from the equation. And I'm like, no. We will always be around to bug you.
Or save us.
Oh,
or save it.
Yep. I like that. I like how you're thinking. But that you'll have like patent attorneys that are able to just spit out a wholesale patent applications from AI and whatnot. But again, there are certain rules and laws that you need to follow and case law that you need to follow. So it's going to definitely still need a set of human eyes on it. So AI is great in terms of augmenting the human experience, but not replacing it.
So is there consensus here on this stage that humans definitely always need to be a part of, the innovation, the equation, the whole, process?
Well, certainly in biopharma, because a huge part of biopharma is trust. I mean, we're dealing with people. We're dealing with our family members and our loved ones and their health. And that's a very intimate relationship that you have with your doctor. And I think it's something that's shared and carried by the entire ecosystem that provides benefit to patients. So fundamentally, the most trusted interaction you're going to have with anybody is with someone that you trust. It's another person. And while I completely agree with the panel here, I think AI is an augmentation tool. It is an accelerator. It's something that we can use to enhance capability significantly. But you're fundamentally going to need the scientists. You're going to need the engineers. You're going to need the physicians and the clinicians, because that is the infrastructure of trust. That is the backbone of trust in our business. And so while I do think the future is going to be a kind of a combination of human and non-human employees in big organizations, I do think that is a very real and emergent reality. We're building that at scale within our organization. I'm sure many of you are seeing this come to life in your organizations. I'm playing around with the OpenClaw now, if you're building your own agents. And so I think, the reality of that is that there's going to be non-human employees working alongside human people, but in areas that fundamentally rely on trust for the delivery of benefit, the delivery of better health, the delivery of better outcomes, you're going to need people there. And that is the anchor.
And don't we see that now? Like, we were told repeatedly over the years that AI is going to replace your job. AI is going to take this. AI is going to take that. But even tech folks are realizing that, we still have to have folks part of the equation, that it's not showing that return that they thought that was going to immediately come forth.
I not gonna lie, I did run some questions through ChatGPT and asked their thoughts on what my script should sound like. Although Carmen and Karina did do the heavy lifting, and maybe later, if we have time, I'll read through some of the questions that they each, it had questions for each of you. I mean, it knew right away in less than whatever half a second, millisecond, it came up with it. It was fun. I might have, time for that. On that note, though, AI dominates the conversation, but where are you seeing less visible technologies quietly driving change across biopharma? Maybe we'll start in the middle and then spread out. Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Farron.
Yeah. I'll definitely let the ones who can kind of deep dive kind of respond to it. But in reality, when we hear AI, it's really only a small part of the equation. So AI really realistically is 15% of your entire solution. There's tons of other things, tons of other components. So when we're saying AI is just the thing people see and interact with, right? That's what's visible at the end of it. But it's really only such a small part. There's training, going back to kind of her previous comment. What is the AI ROI? Those are certain metrics that people aren't necessarily looking into when they adopt AI and they're spending millions of dollars. So I'd say, and I'll let them kind of deep dive in the question, but I'd say AI really is a small component of it. It is, obviously it's my swim lane, but like data ecosystem, developing a strategy, understanding your AI ROI, and then I think even after a solution's set up, workforce adoption, like how do you get your people excited and trained and adopting your new technology? So at the end of the day, again, it's probably roughly only 15% of the entire solution.
Yeah, I would say the technology just quietly driving things, I think, is manufacturing, in part due to the current administration trying to bring manufacturing back, but that's also forcing innovation, which will, in terms of including AI to bring costs down so that it can be done stateside, but then also in making things a little cheaper. I think on the health tech side, another place that's silently driving innovation is developments in wearable tech and wearable materials, right? So you think about like the glucose monitor people wear. Like you have to have a material that can, first a glue that can stick to your skin without poisoning you. Then you have to have a device that's small enough to sit on you all day that people are not like, what is that? What is that? And it's hitting people as you're walking around. That takes a lot of engineering and a lot of finite manufacturing to do it also at scale. And I think you're gonna see a lot of that coming more to the forefront in the next couple of years, because as we all kind of said, AI is the new gold rush. But you can't have data without a device. Okay, right? So that's a big one everyone's overlooking. That's been overlooked for 10 years because it's been digital health, now AI, but where's all this data coming from? We've had a backload of data that people could just jump into with digital health, now jump into with AI. At a certain point, that bubble's gonna bust. We need new data, new equipment to collect that's more accurate, right? That's easy to use. That's going to come from manufacturing. That's gonna come from engineering design. That's gonna come from new materials. That's also gonna come from new bioprocessing techniques, right? So like, think of the future CRISPRs that might be coming out and being developed in the lab right now. Right? So quietly, no one's really talking about devices or manufacturing from an innovation standpoint. But you will see that states are applying for state funding to set up manufacturing. That's for a reason. It's not only going to bring jobs, but it's going to bring innovation. It's going to bring new products. And those will be things you guys will see in your home in like the next 15 to 20 years, in my opinion.
I love that point. Again, I'm picking up more of what you're putting down. So I, like kind of in my day-to-day work, I work with manufacturing people and drug development people, so your doctors, your scientists, and I'm always surprised by the sophistication in our manufacturing organization, our colleagues. In biotechnology, the process defines the product. So how you make it, how you make that therapeutic, how you make that medicine that's directly injected into your arm, oftentimes if you're using a biologic, an injectable, or directly shot into your abdomen. People taking GLP-1s out here, these are new technologies. That is an immediate, your body kind of absorbs that immediately. And so the sophistication that goes into making sure that that is safe, making sure that it's a durable effect that can last over time is incredibly complex. And part of the innovation that we're seeing right now is just trying to extend the amount of time that a drug can be active in your system so that it's more convenient for a patient in their day-to-day life. Oftentimes people are familiar with taking a pill every day, but that's something you have to think about, you have to remember. If you're older, you have to kind of develop systems to just make sure you take your medicine. We've improved upon that. We've come up with infused medication, injectable medication that you can stretch out that duration of treatment. You can take a shot every week, every 2 weeks. In respiratory medicine, it's trying to extend that duration of treatment to every 3 months, every 6 months, once a year. There's been therapeutics that, you can do one shot for certain diseases. This is kind of innovation we've seen in multiple sclerosis. One shot and it fundamentally cures and creates long-term remission of relapsing and remitting multiple sclerosis. That's not a treatment that we have at Roche Genentech, but that's just innovation in the field. A lot of that comes down to just the sophistication of the engineers, the process managers, the people that can take a formulation, move it from bioreactor to bioreactor, figure out how to, make sure that the medicine that's sitting within that is stable, so that it can provide benefit over time, is incredibly sophisticated. And I would say, I would build on that as an incredible point.
Well, I'm certainly not in league with these incredible people, being in law. But just for my own curiosity, I think what is amazing is with AI, part of AI is that thinking about this during Black History Month, that there are some certain diseases and what have you that are particular for African Americans. And it would be so extraordinary if we could use and parlay AI into drilling down, like using CRISPR or using some other technology that could really help us delve into what is the issue? What is that collective issue that makes African Americans or African American women unique targets for certain type of diseases? For example, uterine fibroids. Why is it so prevalent amongst African American women? So I'm hoping that AI has the most powerful punch in personal health.
We have a lot of questions from the audience. They're real humans. So I want to make sure we have time to go through these incredible questions. Thank you so much for them. And anyone, if you feel compelled, can jump in and answer these questions. AI is still reliant on algorithms. What concerns do you have about the owners of the technology steering responses that align with profits over truth?
Well, maybe my initial response to that, as you all can appreciate, biotechnology, drug development is a highly regulated space. There are a lot of lawyers, there are a lot of regulators, there are a lot of people that are kind of monitoring what we're doing because it's safety is at the end of it. It's people going to take a medicine and we have to render it safe. Or they're going to be a part of a research study and we have to make sure that safety is, at the center of what we do. So I do think maybe in some domains, AI tools and algorithms might incentivize a certain behavior with the kind of movement of capital that could be self-interested. I think there's a lot of filters in healthcare that prevent that from being a fundamental element of the healthcare enterprise at scale. I think our challenge right now is just trying to get health authorities to kind of view AI tools, like understand what an AI tool is producing. Like what are these insights that are coming out of this tool? And how do you then validate the methodology and the science that went into the outcome? And that is at the forefront of kind of regulatory strategy at this point. So I think in healthcare, while I do acknowledge that that question has a lot of merit and it could be very valid in certain industries, I think there are just some inherent barriers for that type of behavior to present itself in healthcare at scale that would, fundamentally, our companies don't want to disrupt the trust that we have with peoples, with communities and societies. We think about this around the world, and these type of questions are surfaced around the world. But I think there's some barriers for that type of behavior to become implicit at scale in healthcare.
I'll just kind of summarize some of that would be in healthcare and biotech, I think there's this data governance piece that doesn't allow it to have free reign. So I think in summary, I think that's a lot of what's happened there. And then secondly, I think the algorithms, the influence, all of that stuff has been around for decades. Right, whether it's it's Facebook or Google, it's just now we're calling it AI, right? But that type of influence has been around forever. But yeah, to his point, I think a lot of that is reduced due to the governance. So.
And the data governance is, you have lawyers, we have contracts and we have, we can regulate the behavior with those contracts. I know that I deal with, I'm seeing increasingly, AI handling in terms of data and what have you, and the corresponding systems, and making sure to build in that sort of behavior and what we expect from you as a partner in this space. So it's not like it's the wild, wild west. There is some regulation, there are laws, and we are governed by laws.
For diseases such as ALS and other muscular wasting diseases with a genetic component, how long do you guess realistic somatic cures through AI will realistically exist? In how many years, maybe?
Hey, anybody getting on that one?
I would say that's a good question for large biopharma, FDA, because even if they develop it, somebody has to approve it, and they have to understand it to approve it. And generally, it takes like 10 to 20 years to even bring something to market that you can get approved, because you have to do such a large study. Not only do you have to validate the fundamental science, you have to have a study that's representative of the population who might get the disease. So that's not like 10 people, that's thousands of people across the country. And the overall results have to be accurate enough that they could approve a large biopharma company to sell it without killing people. So that just takes time. And I don't know the internal R&D of a large pharma company if they're working on a solution for ALS right now, but if they're not, that's at least 20 years.
Yeah. Well, no, like these type of rare diseases are a sharp focus across the industry. And we've seen a lot of really exciting innovation in gene therapy. And gene therapy is fundamentally kind of just identifying the gene that causes pathobiology, sort of like a pathophysiology, so some sort of long-standing disease process, identifying that gene, and then making a correction. Now, what Sana said is very important. Like that is the kind of scientific hypothesis. Can we replace that gene and then eliminate the manifestation of that disease? The challenge comes in is like proving that hypothesis through clinical development and the time course that you would have to monitor a patient and the surrogate endpoints you would have to be able to organize to say, all right, we've replaced that gene. Now we need to understand, is your disease progressing or in a way that is consistent with the natural history of that disease, or has it fundamentally changed? Do you not now have that disease anymore? And that could be challenging to do. And I think that therein lies the challenge of those type of rare diseases. But we have seen tremendous innovation in gene therapy, these ability to give one treatment at one time and it causes long-term remission or cure of disease. There have been drugs that have been approved for this as of, recently. And I think with these new technologies and just the kind of experience of having gone through the process, I think that in and of itself proves that it can be done. And then that is a catalytic kind of system in and of itself.
There's also a bioethics angle to this, right? Because when you think about what Sana was saying in terms of the human cost to get to that solution, to get to that endpoint, I just think that we're here in the US, I don't think we're quite ready for that human cost that would be required to get to that point, to get to that solution.
Maybe I'll build on that. So I agree, it has some challenges there. I think part of it is, we are companies too, and so there has to be a return on investment that I think comes out of any kind of large capital investment. I think in my company, we put $15 billion in R&D every year, and those are on just, kind of calculated bets. There's no money that's coming from that. That's just calculated risk taking. Now you try to de-risk, that type of large capital investment. You're putting billions. I have hundreds of $millions in my programs now. And so you're figuring out ways to try to reduce costs, speed things up, try to turn benefit through faster. And I think in rare disease, part of the opportunity there is just the tremendous patient benefit. And I think all the scientists, all the doctors, all the people that work in these companies, mostly those people, and they're just hardcore scientific people that just want to, kind of rewrite clinical textbooks, rewrite the science, just do good work to solve these big challenges that people face. So you have that. So you have the right kind of motivation and inspiration in the workforce that works in this space. And I think what we're also seeing is that there's also a commercial environment that allows for us to price it at a certain way and realize the value of that type of curative innovation. And I think the companies that have been successful in that have started to figure that out. And I think that creates more opportunity for acceleration. Now, I don't know the time scale because it's not my area of expertise, but I know that companies have proven that gene therapy is valid science that we can deliver against. And so I think that in and of itself accelerates innovation.
But just to close on that on the timeline, because there's so many regulated phases you have to go through, even after the lab development work is done, to do phase 1 animal studies, phase 2, animal studies, and phase 1 human studies, phase 2 human studies, phase 3 human studies, then you can submit to FDA, right? And again, it's not 10 patients, it's a representative population. So even if they're working on something, it's not something that can come out tomorrow. And the reason for that is you don't want them to sell you something that you think is going to cure you and ends up killing you, right? So at least it takes 15 to 20 years to get a new drug out. So you can maybe research and see where large companies like Genentech is focusing their R&D dollars. You can find that on their investor financials. Wink, wink, anybody? You can see what they're focused on R&D and see if they're working on anything in there. And if you guys want to be a part of that innovation, you can sign up for the studies, right? Because they can't get it out to market until they hit a certain sample size, right? And so if you want to be a part of accelerating that innovation, go see where they're focusing on R&D. Just go do some research, ChatGPT it, and go to clinicaltrials.gov, see if anyone's doing a study on that you know someone who can maybe be in that study and help accelerate that innovation, right? Because it just takes time.
So I've met a number of Carnegie Mellon graduates in my time, and I swear they must be kind of infusing biotech kind of insights in the water up there, because all of them have a comprehensive understanding of the domain, of the space, of the challenges, of the complexity of it all. So well said.
Thank you.
Okay, do you think industry trust in AI will backfire when it comes to drug development and patient health? And this was a second part to a question around regulatory agencies. And if you thought that, AI would reach a level of reproducibility that would be accepted by regulatory agencies?
Yes, it's already on the way. There's already like an AI pathway in the FDA where you can get your FDA software or hardware through, not with less scrutiny, but they understand that things are changing quickly, right? Today's algorithm is yesterday's trash, and it's on to the next one. And so if you can't keep up, the tech can't keep up, right? And so then the FDA, instead of being a facilitator of innovation, becomes the bottleneck. So they are already putting pathways in place that allow you to come through with AI if you can prove that you have stopped the development at a certain time and you understand the accuracy for that version of the code, right? It's already in path. Pathways are being laid. It's happening, whether we want it or not. It's about how we leverage it at this point, but it's happening.
Maybe I would add to that, it has to be explainable. So there's some trends that I appreciate. I appreciate the new FDA leadership. I think they're seemingly pretty progressive. They're changing some of the paradigms that have been long-standing paradigms in the science enterprise. It's fundamentally important in science that you have a question, you test that question, you're able to reliably reproduce the results. And that's been the standard for drug development for forever. And that, I would say, is something that continues to need to be the standard. We need to be able to reproduce efficacy results. We need to be able to reproduce, more importantly, safety. I think the new FDA is signaling an evolution of their thinking, that in certain areas you can just use one clinical study that is used to define the efficacy and safety of a potential therapeutic in a certain disease area. And my hypothesis is that they believe that we can move towards this type of regulatory environment because of these tools that are emerging around it. AI, the ability for us to understand disease more thoroughly, and the wraparound ecosystem of new tools. Now, this is like very new. This is like kind of within the past week, new guidance that's coming out from the agency. We need to see this kind of work its way into the review divisions. I think that's going to take time. And so I do think our kind of current standard of regulatory review will persist for the foreseeable future. But I think that they're signaling change and a receptivity to evolving the way science is adjudicated by some of the messages that the current leadership is communicating. And I think that's intriguing. I think we have to watch it closely. I think we still need to fundamentally kind of maintain our strong orientation to patient safety and scientific integrity. So I don't think those things go away. Yeah. But I also am seeing some indications that, that there's a openness to evaluate things differently. And I think that's probably underlined by the fact that we have new tools and more analytical capabilities than we've had before.
I don't know if it would, just going back to the original questions in terms of whether or not it would backfire. The way I could see it backfiring is if we just rely on the data outputs, if we don't interrogate what comes out of AI. That's how I could see it in the drug discovery process or in the regulatory process, that it could be problematic.
I'm going to try to go a little faster. We got about 20 minutes left, and we still have a stack of questions to go. Okay, the FDA and EMA published joint guidelines on best practices for AI use in drug development in January 2026. They listed human centricity as the first guideline, and I am curious how you see human-centric design values driving AI use across biopharma use cases, especially regarding decision-grade AI. Thanks, Dr. Chantel. Thank you, Dr. Chantel.
Wow, we got the real experts in the room. All right. Any thoughts before? Yeah.
I'm going to say, a lot of my experience is you define the problem that you're trying to solve, and so at the core of that, it should be human-centered, right? And so that's how you mitigate just creating some non-value added solution. And I also think when building out a solution, you do it in iterations. But yeah, I'd say throughout my experience, we try to have a strong focus on human-centered design, whether that's like the interface, whether that's the solution, whether that's how people interact with it. You doing that in iterations, you mitigate just creating something that doesn't add value. So that'd be my summary.
Legally, for us, we have to have a human, right? It has to be human-centric. So it's going to be up to us to carefully document that process, to make sure that, we understand, like, what AI generated, where the human component is, what happened in the wet lab. So it's just going to cause us to be on our toes in terms of documenting everything that's necessary in terms of the inventive concept.
And I'll maybe just kind of add on that briefly, like human-centric drug development has been at the core of what we do at Genentech. I see this within my programs. And we have a team that's focused on patient centricity and patient engagement. And that team sits right on life cycle teams with your development lead, your manufacturing lead, your commercial lead, your regulatory expertise, all of the experts that are responsible for kind of shepherding science to becoming medicines. And we have a patient person there to just make sure that we talk to patient groups, patients directly, that feeds into the protocols. A protocol is basically like what a clinical research agenda looks like, kind of what's the question that we're asking, how are we going to involve patients in this research program, how are they going to be tested, et cetera. And we use patients to like vet and validate all of that before we move towards operationalizing a clinical trial that we would enroll people in from all around the world. So I would say like it's implicit in the kind of just the operating model. And then I think as we integrate the tools that people are using within that operating model, I think it doesn't remove that person that's on the team that's looking at it from that perspective and making sure that human-centric design is germane to drug development.
So I lied. That's something we probably could use some AI to help us with in terms of timekeeping. We only have 4 minutes left. Human error. On that note, I mean, we're all eager to go out there. We have more Black Excellence right outside the door. We've got incredible wine that's pouring and some treats for you. So we want to make sure that you're able to network and socialize with each other. So if I didn't get to your questions, please hang on to them. Our speakers will stick around. Yes? Okay, cool. I'll wind down. And I was going to ask a question from ChatGPT. Do you want to entertain that maybe? And then, yeah?
I think that's a great idea.
I mean, just to test it.
You've been teasing this all panel, so I feel like we only got to follow you there.
Okay, look, they did give me some questions for each of you, but they did also give me some suggestions for strong closing questions.
Human-centric. Use of AI.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Generous, give us something easy.
I'm gonna read it in the voice that I hear ChatGPT talking to me. 10 years from now. My ChatGPT is romantic. 10 years from now, what breakthrough will we look back on and say, that changed everything? Tashika, Dr. Tashika, we'll go down.
I would say a significant advance for breast cancer. I see that happening within 10 years.
Oh, let's see. Man, okay, so I have kids, and I love seeing like their innovation and be able to put them in front of these certain tools. And so I'd say from a technology space, just in the next 10 years, like they're coming up with solutions without even going to schools outside of just their studies and research. I think they'll be able to come with these innovations or just kids within the next 10 years. And then the complement of that would be working with, again, people with domain expertise. So I'd say like they would be the kind of the next thing I'd see is like just kids now having access to these tools in hand, and they don't have these limitations and barriers that we do as adults. So I'd say that's something I'm looking forward to the next 10 years.
Oh, that's a good answer. I would say I'm just gonna give my moonshot of the craziest thing I would love to see. I would love to see the combination of AI, CRISPR, and stem cells.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yes, used to advance precision medicine, where we can not just target the genes as an adult, but even embryonically, and use it for tissue regeneration and growth, and think about dementia, if we could just, it's a buildup of plaque, but if you can also just help the brain regenerate, right? Oh, somebody agrees with me.
We're not going to wait 10 years.
Yeah, I would say that's where I would love to see innovation come, where people feel more safe and secure with things like CRISPR and the combination of stem cells, that we can actually do real research in that area to drive not just drug delivery, but tissue regeneration and addressing chronic diseases and catching things early. I think with the advancement of AI is driven by what in the future? I forgot quantum computing. Quantum computing. Yes, with quantum computing, we'll be able to process this data so quickly in terms of thinking of the genome and CRISPR that will actually become a real opportunity, right? And so I hope that the regulations converge, that we can actually do something, explore that edge of AI, CRISPR, stem cells, and see how it can actually be used to advance human health.
Amazing.
All right, that's incredibly inspiring. Everything on the panel. All right, I would say for breast cancer, there's innovation on the horizon that's really exciting. I think so. I would say that there's something really exciting for breast cancer, like really exciting. And I think we need to kind of make the first experiment for the kids that we're going to kind of put in front of these tools. Kind of everything that you just described: stem cells, biology, quantum computing. Let's give that to the AI. Let's put them to task, because I think there's some solutions. And I may just add, very maybe selfishly, and then I'll give a professional one. Selfishly, my father passed away from pancreatic cancer. That's been one of the most intractable cancers to actually kind of drive innovation. There's encouraging signals, kind of immediate signals on the horizon. So I would just say, kind of, if we can figure out a cure for pancreatic cancer, I think we would have figured out breast cancer. We would have figured out a lot of the other cancers that we have innovation is further along, and that's a very challenging one to derive benefit in. And then I would maybe say professionally, which maybe is like a seed planted to the innovators and the entrepreneurs in the room, is if we can just reduce the cost of phase 2 and the clinical probability of success between phase 2 and phase 3 clinical studies through some convergence of AI tools, of health technology, of all the expertise that's on this panel right now, and then the kids that are coming up underneath that are going to kind of figure this out. If we can if they can just take a 5% increase in clinical probability of success, I mean, that is kind of magnitudes of kind of economic value, patient impact, the ability to do more and accelerate innovation across drug development at scale. It would be tremendous. And so I think just enhancements at kind of phase 2 and phase 3 probability of clinical success, optimized through the innovation that's emerging within rooms like this and the kids that come.
Let's give a huge round of applause for all of our speakers, Dr. Guerin, Dr. Sana, Dr. Farron, and Dr. Tashika. Thank you all for being here and for having me as a moderator and for choosing the Commonwealth Club World Affairs of California for having this conversation. The allyship, the coalition, the energy, the friendship, I mean, all of it, to me, is such an honor, but also it is my hope that we're all here for a better tomorrow. And so I want to bring up our friends again who really made tonight possible, and I hope that we all walk out of here not only finding a cure for all of these diseases and world peace maybe, but that we'll walk out of here supporting these amazing two human beings, Karina Kaufman and Dr. Carmen Banks. Welcome back.
I don't know about y'all, but I have goosebumps just hearing this entire conversation. But yeah, thank you so much again for having us. We have a whole suite of folks outside, which Karina will give some more context to. Yeah. And just want to really, thank you guys for being a part of this moment, for honoring our history, for honoring our legacy. And when you think of biotech, when you think of innovation, and when you think of people that are really driving this industry forward, I hope that you also think of the Black people that are doing that behind it.
Yeah, that's right. Nice job. Thank you guys. You guys make it so fun too. That's why I just love my people because it's just so entertaining. I love the banter, the back and forth. We got all these good dads here. Anyways, it's amazing. So Gilead Sciences, Michelle Meow, the Commonwealth Club. Thank you guys for allowing us to be here.
But yeah, we're really excited to support all of these Black-owned businesses here in the room. Please put your money where your mouth is when it comes to supporting the Black community if you can. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you. Thank you.